Hello, welcome on in, everybody. Jill Zarin and Bethenny Frankel have reunited, and it feels so good. Or does it? Let's break it all down. Let's recap the rewind. Oh, actually, it was technically just B, but she's doing all the podcasts, and she made that very clear in the interview today. So get ready, let's break it on down. Oh, hi, it's me, Zack Peter, pop culture junkie, reality TV insider, published author, and host of the No Filter with Zack Peter podcast. Here I'll bring you all the latest news on the Real Housewives, deep dives into celebrity legal scandals, and unfiltered convos with your favorite stars. I've got you covered, and yes, I always keep receipts. So be sure to hit that like button and subscribe for all the latest tea. Now, let's dive in. So Bethenny Frankel has invited Jill Zarin onto her podcast. Not just one podcast, but all the podcasts. Apparently she has like 50 fucking podcasts. And so she decided she was going to have Jill Zarin on for the first time ever. And Jill Zarin was going to be on all the podcasts. We're talking RHONY, we're talking Just B, we're talking all of them, because she said it like 50 times. To at one point, Jill Zarin was like, what do you mean all the podcasts? And she's like, well, we have multiple podcasts, and we have one where we give Housewives university advices, and we have one where we rewatch the show, and we're going to rewatch the new New York. So anyway, they released the main interview. I'm assuming that's what it was, like the one, like the featured one, the featured podcast. I don't know. I don't even understand why Bethenny has so many damn podcasts, or what all the feeds actually are. It really just seems like a way for her to monetize as much as she possibly can. But at this point, what more does she need to monetize? But she also was very clear that she doesn't make any money off of her YouTube. She's like, money, we do the YouTube, and we spend millions of dollars on the YouTube. Zach has been so busy with all the tea this week. Yes, Brittany, I have. Kelly all day says, I listened to the Bethenny and Jill, such a good podcast. It was good. So let's actually break it on down. Oh, yes. Thank you, Gossip Class. I did get my hair touched up, because I have to go to New York next week for the live show with the Brav Bros, July 26th at City Winery in New York City. I'm headed to New York next week. I hope you're ready for it. I'm getting ready, Freddie. It's going to be fun. It's going to be good. We going to live life. Hey, ho, hey, ho. Okay, let's dive into it. Bethenny's podcast. I'm not sure which one, because there were 50 of them, but Jill Zarin was on one of them today. So apparently, so they get into the very beginning, right, of how they first sort of met and how they both got cast onto the Real Housewives of New York. Bobby was apparently the one that really pushed for Bethenny, but Jill Zarin is the one that made the intro. So Bethenny does give credit to them, and she's just like, I wouldn't have been cast on the show if it weren't for Bobby and Jill. Jill very much wanted the show to happen. Jill was trying very hard to get the show greenlit because she wanted the fame, and she even kind of admits to that. She's like, listen, I had the money, but I wanted a little bit of the fame. I wanted to be on television. I wanted to find something to promote. And at least she owns it, right? So Jill says that she doesn't resent Bethenny's success, but she does resent that Bethenny wasn't able to share that success with her, because obviously they had their falling out, and she's just like, you left me behind. And Bethenny's like, well, you were a little bit much. Like, why would I bring you on? And then Jill said that she was hurt because it felt like Bethenny wanted to be the Beyonce. And Bethenny's like, well, I did want to be the Beyonce. But Jill Zarin wanted them to be the Lucy and Ethel. But Bethenny was like, nah, I'm a solo bitch. I'm going to do Sasha Fierce right on out of here. And Jill was hurt by that, because she's like, I saw you before you were successful, and then I watched you become successful, and you didn't want to include me in your success. And that was really hurtful. And Bethenny's like, I get that, but you were also a lot. So they also said that it was really complicated, and it made their friendship really complicated, because they weren't really sure what was supposed to be on camera and what was supposed to be off camera, because it all kind of got twisted in between seasons, because their lives and their friendships really became about content. So they were very much hyper aware of the fact that the show is the content. So they're like, well, we can't really talk, and we can't really have these conversations and situations off camera on the off season, because these are the things that are supposed to be playing out on camera. So they both were very clear that, like, it really does screw with you. Then they get into the funeral, right? Because that's a big thing that everybody's talking about right now, because Jill Zarin is saying that she did not know that Bravo cameras would be filming at Bobby's funeral, which was the big moment where we see Bethenny and Jill, and they came back together. and we have that whole moment, right? So Jill Zarin says that she actually never signed a release for them to use her likeness or her image at the reunion. Jill says that she told that the producers told her, or that one of the producers told her that they were banking on Jill not suing them for using that footage, which I get, but it's also kind of weird. Like, why would it be hard to get Jill Zarin to sign off on a release form to use her image at the funeral? Like, why would you bet on her not suing them if, like, it wouldn't be that hard to get her to sign off on the release? I don't know, that whole part was kind of weird, but she says that she had no clue that Bethenny was at the funeral, but that when she did see Bethenny, that she was so happy that Bethenny came to the funeral, and she said that, she was told by someone, a mutual friend, that Bethenny wanted to talk to her, and she was so happy about that. She's like, "Okay, well, this is a good thing, Bethenny's here, she's honoring Bobby, she wants to talk, maybe this will be a good moment between us." But she says that she didn't know that the cameras were there. So when she saw Bethany, she said that the press was all out there. So she wasn't really sure what the cameras were for necessarily. But she says that she was definitely not mic'd. She had no clue that this was being filmed for Housewives, and that she never signed a release or even knew that they would be present at the funeral. Andy Cohen has told a different story. He said that Jill Zarin invited the cameras. Jill is now saying that, yes, she did make mention. She says she made mention of, like, yes, wanting to honor Bobby's memory in some sort of way because he was so important in Housewives, like the franchise and like the New York series specifically. But she says that the only reason she didn't sue the network is because she actually liked how they handled it and how they made it a beautiful moment that honored Bobby and also brought her and Bethenny back together. But she says that she didn't even know about that moment being caught on camera for Housewives until she watched it in the trailer when the new season was about to drop, which is kind of weird. And so Bethenny and Jill Zarin both agreed that it was disgusting. And they call out Bravo and they're like, that's disgusting that they would do that. And it's disgusting that they would manipulate us in that way. Because Bethenny said that she's on it. Bethenny was honest in saying that she didn't know if she would have gone had it not been for the show. She said that she was hesitant. And she said this is how the show really fucks with your head and how it fucks with your sense of like what's real and what's just content, because she said that she knew that this would be a really big moment and that she wouldn't have put herself in an actual spectacle, a media circus at the funeral. Because obviously, like Jill said, all the press was there. She said that she wouldn't put herself in that spectacle if she didn't know that it would be a really powerful moment for the show, which it ultimately became, right? Because they were honoring Bobby. It was a reunion between Bethenny and Jill. It was Bethenny's way of being able to show Jill some empathy and compassion after such a great loss. So Bethenny's like, in my head, I knew it was a really good moment and I knew that this was a powerful moment and it would be great for the show. And that's kind of where your sense of self and sense of reality really begins to get skewed, because she's like, I knew that this would be a good moment, but like on a personal level, had we not been filming for the show, had I not been on the show, I don't think I would have shown up to the funeral because I knew that there would be so many photos and paparazzi and all these different things that would really kind of twist everything. But she says that she would have still gone to the Shiva, which was not the public funeral, because she knew that, obviously the media circus was not something she wanted to participate in. But believing that this would be important to Jill and knowing what a powerful moment that it would be is ultimately what convinced her to actually go, because she was told that she was told by the producers and by Andy that Jill really wanted this moment to happen or really wanted them to film and honor Bobby's memory. So she was like, okay, if this honors Bobby's memory, if Jill's okay with this, this would be really great for the show. Cool. But Jill says that she was open to them filming the funeral, but she was just never told that they were actually going to do so, nor was she even aware that Bethenny was going to be there or that Bethenny was going to be there with cameras. So it seemed like Jill was just caught off guard by, like, it seemed like she would have been okay with whatever they were willing to do, but they weren't fully transparent and they kind of did this gotcha moment because they were hoping to have this moment between Bethenny and Jill. And Bethenny's like, I feel horrible because it feels like I ambushed you at the funeral, and I ambushed the funeral showing up there with cameras when you weren't even prepared for there to be cameras. And Bethenny felt really badly about that. But she's like, I was under the impression that you were actually cool with it. This. And Jill was like, it's not that I wasn't cool with it, and it's not that I wouldn't have been cool with it because I had talked about honoring Bobby in some way. It's just that they didn't tell me that this was the approach they were going to take. And so Jill says, that she wanted Bobby's memory to be honored. So she offered to film a Shiva with the other women, but once the other women found out that Bethenny had filmed at the funeral, they didn't wanna do the Shiva anymore, and it wasn't the real Shiva because Jill was like, "I don't want you to film the real Shiva, but we can do a separate, like, private Shiva with the girls where they get to come, honor Bobby, acknowledge him, and pay their respects to him on camera," because the show was such an important part of Bobby's life. It wasn't all of his life, but it was an important piece of it, and she's like, "I wanna make sure his memory gets honored in that." So, she's basically her and Bethenny kind of come to the agreement that the girls didn't end up filming the Shiva because they were upset that they didn't get their moment on camera at the funeral, and that's why Bethenny and or sorry, not Bethenny, but that's why Dorinda and Ramona at the reunion that season were very much like, "Oh, I think it's gross and it's tacky, and I wanted nothing to do with the cameras, and I didn't wanna be there at the funeral, and I wanted to avoid them as much as possible," and they made a big deal about it, but Bethenny and Jill are like, "I don't think that it was so much that they didn't wanna be a part of it, but it made it look like Bethenny was the only one that showed up with cameras and showed up to pay her respect, because I don't even think the other girls knew that Bethenny was coming and that she was going to have cameras there, and they were upset that Bethenny was able to show her compassion, have that moment with Jill on camera at the funeral, and that's why all the other ladies ended up pulling out of the private Shiva that they were supposed to film after the funeral. So, they were upset that they didn't get their moment on camera. Then Bethenny and Jill get into legacy, and Jill says that she didn't need the money, and she could have come back if she wanted to. She could have accepted the money and gone into the deal, but it sounds to me like it was maybe more about the principle of the fact that they weren't offering her nearly as much as the other women. Jill said that they were even offering Kelly Bensimone even more money than they were offering Jill, and she's like, "That's really weird because even if it's down to, like, the number of seasons that you were on the show, Kelly was on the show 1 season less than me, so how is it that Kelly's making more money and I'm literally making the least amount of money?" So, it seems like they tried to lowball her, but Bethenny says that they should have all met in the middle, right? As Bethenny said in the podcast, it was a new concept, so there should have been a favored nations clause where they all got paid the same. I get that, I agree with that. They seem to think that, like, the other women thought that this would just be an extension of the show that they were already filming, so they were taken into effect and into account, like, "We've been on the show for multiple seasons now, we've continued to film, we deserve this specific salary or whatever because that's what we were getting paid before, and now it's a new legacy concept, so we should probably be getting paid even more." But Jill was like, "No, I'm not gonna settle to be, like, the absolute lowest paid and to get absolutely nothing out of this." So she's like, I didn't need the money, and I didn't need to be on the show. I was just doing it, because they asked me to." She's like, "But for the right deal, I would have absolutely done it." But ultimately, that wasn't what it was. But Bethenny says that they should have all met in the middle. They should have found a way to, like, lock in the favored nations clause, but it seems like the ego from the other women is what was really preventing them from doing that. Jill says that it was actually her idea to do Legacy as a girls' trip, and she told Luann, and then Luann ended up being the one to pitch it to Andy, and Andy ended up greenlighting the whole Real Housewives Ultimate Girls Trip Legacy, which is weird. I should probably take credit for that because I've been saying that since way at the beginning. I was like, it shouldn't be a full season. It should be like an Ultimate Girls Trip style show where they honor the legacy of RHONY, and that's why it should be RHONY Legacy, is because they're honoring the legacy that they're leaving behind. I also thought Jill and Bethenny should have been on it, but whatever, they didn't do it. Jill says that she was invited on the Ultimate Girls Trip RHONY Legacy, and she feels like that was retaliation for not just agreeing to her original deal, which I think was only like 15 grand. She's like, "That's all they were willing to offer me." So me not choosing to sign my deal kind of screwed that show. So in retaliation, they did not invite me on the Ultimate Girls Trip for the RHONY Legacy Girls. But now she says that, she's over it. She's moved on from Housewives. Housewives is just not part of the life that she wants to have anymore. She talks about being on Amazon's new show, The GOAT, which is the greatest of all time. And they're trying to find out who's the greatest reality star of all time. I believe Reza Farahan's on that show. Kristen Doute's on that show. Jill Zarin's on that show. And so they all live together and have to go through a series of different challenges to see who is the GOAT, the greatest reality star of all time. But she's like, "Listen, I can do that and I can have a blast." She says Housewives would not have been fun for her. It would have been drama. She doesn't need that energy in her life anymore, that her time with Housewives is done and she's moving on. But that doing a show like Go on Amazon was a lot of fun. It was worth it. It was light, it was levity, it was all the things that, reality TV should be when you're going into it and filming it. So, she doesn't seem like she misses Housewives at all. And then I believe they're doing an episode of Rewives where Bethenny interviews, or not interviews, but her and Jill recap the new RHONY. Sorry, can't okay, so let's read what you guys are saying. Sharon says, "Sorry, can't stand Jill. She's definitely a fame seeker. I find her very boring." Leslie says, "How does everyone like new Real Housewives of the New York cast?" I haven't watched it all. I've only watched the first few minutes of the premiere, but I do have the first 3 episodes that I'll probably dive through all this weekend. But from what I've seen so far, it doesn't look bad. It just feels like a completely different show. I wish they didn't call it The Real Housewives of New York. I wish they would have called it like Real Girlfriends in Manhattan. I think that would have been a better revival of that franchise. Leave RHONY where it was and let it end where it was and do a Real Girlfriends spinoff, right? Real Girlfriends in Manhattan, I think, still has that RHONY vibe. But also, would we be as interested in it if it were called Real Girlfriends in New York or Real Girlfriends in Manhattan? And not had the luster of being the RHONY reboot. I think it being RHONY reboot is ultimately what got a lot of people hooked and interested, even the people that were reluctant, like myself, that are now still going to watch regardless, or at least give it a try. I think had it been called something different, we wouldn't have been as interested, but because it's called Real Housewives of New York, because it's the season 14 technically, I think there's a natural intrigue that we all kind of want to see what it brings, right? Brittany says, I forgot about that. I haven't watched yet either. Been watching Crappy Lake. There are OG problems. I haven't finished watching all of Crappy Lake either, but I hear that's really good as well. So you have Crappy Lake, you have the new RHONY. So I mean, I think I don't know. It's not a terrible thing. We'll have to see what these ladies continue to bring. Like I said, I have the first 3 episodes. I'll try to binge them all this weekend. I don't like to binge when I have advanced screeners because I feel like when there's an advanced screener, um, it sort of throws off my timeline. So then when I'm commenting, I don't know if I'm necessarily commenting on this week's episode or the episode that comes out next week or the episode that comes out in 2 weeks. So I typically like to watch right before I have to have any sort of commentary. But I did start the new RHONY. I like Bryn. I feel like from what I've seen so far, she's great, but I also feel like maybe she might be a little overhyped. Sai seems to be my favorite so far. Um, what is it? Jezel? Jezel, I think is her name. I believe is how you pronounce it. Boring. Sai is my favorite. Bryn is cute. I like Aaron for some reason. Bryn, Aaron, and Sai, I think, are my 3 favorites. Um, the others didn't really seem to like make an impact for me. And Jezel is the one that threw up on the carpet at the premiere, right? I think she's boring. I don't even find her interesting. I think her throwing up on the carpet at the premiere was the most interesting thing she's brought to us. But again, I'm only a few minutes into the premiere. Maybe it gets better. Maybe the future episodes get better. I don't know. Kelly all day says, I can't bring myself to watch this RHONY. It's not for me. That's why I think they should have called it somewhere else. Even if it were the Real Housewives of Manhattan, right? It's still RHONY. It still can be considered a RHONY reboot, but like these girls are Manhattan girls. They're not New York City girls. I guess they're all throughout New York City, but I just feel like Manhattan has a younger, fresher vibe to it. The name of Manhattan rather than New York City. Like New York City does feel very Upper East Side, right? It feels very Sonia Morgan and Ramona Singer and Countess Luann de Lesseps. Whereas Manhattan just feels a little more edgy and young and vibey, you know? And I think that could have been fine. Threw up on the carpet. Well, I guess I know what I'm watching tonight. Well, Brittany, it doesn't happen on the show. It was at the premiere for Real Houses of New York. Apparently she was sick. And so she threw up on the carpet. But here's the thing, she's like the most boring one of them all. That I'm like, okay, well, at least that made her interesting. But she threw up, I guess, twice, like once in the bathroom and then once on the red carpet. So now everyone's like, oh, well, this makes me interested. But like when you watch the show, you're like, she's not that interesting. Um, Bravo Babe says, I've never gotten a better vibe from the newbie than I have from Bryn. Bryn is fun. Bryn is light. Bryn is bubbly. She's funny. She's got good confessionals. She's not a Bethenny Frankel. but she's more of a Heather Gay, right? Bubbly, fun, funny, she's got a good energy and a good vibe to her. I'm curious to see what the rest of the episode and what the rest of the season will bring. They said give them at least 10 episodes of grace, so we'll see. I watched RHONY and I didn't like it. Arguing about cheese is dumb. Okay, Lauren, see, I feel like people either really loved it or really didn't love it. Some people felt like it was just kind of dumb and out of the realm of Housewives. And other people felt like it was fun and kind of like a refresh. I like that they're younger. I like that they're spunkier. I like that there's like a diversity in who they are. But like, I get that the original concept. Remember, this show was called Manhattan Moms. It was supposed to be about wealthy Upper East Side women, Upper East Side white women that were out of touch with reality and uber wealthy. It was a very specific type of woman that was cast on the show. This new vibe feels a little more, I don't know if I wanna say, like, I guess a real authentic representation of New York, but again, and this is what I think people fail to remember, is that the original concept was never supposed to be an accurate, real representation about women in New York. It was always supposed to be about affluent white women who are trying to get their kids into private schools. That's why the show was originally called Manhattan Moms. It was about school, it was about being a mom, and then eventually it morphed into The Real Housewives of New York City, and yeah, it was a good first episode. I would definitely watch the next episode, and I'm giving it a try with open-minded. That's good, Erin, that's how we should do it. I love that Uba is, Chanel Ayan's cousin. Yeah, I think that's great as well. I think that's a fun sort of meta vibe. Doing what a lesbian prob threw up on the carpet. What? On the carpet of the premiere, she knew her season was boring. I think her body on a subconscious level knew that, and they're like, "We need to vomit on the carpet to make us interesting." Um, but are they actually friends? To me, that's the problem. The original cast were and are friends. I think this is the issue is we're comparing the 2, right? The original show was meant to be about a very specific type of woman in New York City. This show is meant to be a more broader representation of women in New York City. I think the issue is we've called it Real Housewives of New York, but they're 2 very different shows, and they're 2 very different casts of women. So, do I believe that they're authentically friends? No, I believe that they're TV show friends and that they've become friends by having to be on this show, which is fine as long as the relationships are real and genuine. Some of them I think are real and genuine, others I don't feel like are all that real and genuine. I think it's more show and casting. But yeah, again, we can't compare it to the original Ladies because it's a totally different show. So while I agree with you that I don't believe that they're really friends, I don't think the show is about them being genuine friends as much as it's supposed to be a representation of young, ambitious women in New York City. I've met some genuine friends from your shows. Like, yay, Brittany. I'm so glad. I love that. Listen, this is more like this is a community. We are a community. We connect, we relate. Tomorrow's episode of the podcast is going to be, I'm curious to see what people's reactions to it are going to be. I have Jamie Stein on the show. We dive into Kyle and Mauricio's marriage. We dive into Raquel. We dive into Erica Jane meeting the victims and kind of like his intuitive reading on everything since he really is the housewife empath and has a really great podcast where he dives into all of these topics. And then at the end of tomorrow's episode, he reads me and we get into my own personal life, which I'm curious to see how people feel about that. It's going to be an interesting episode. So give me all of your feedback after you watch the full episode tomorrow. I haven't watched it. Are there any good villains, Ben? Ben, I don't know if we're at the place where we know who the villains are. I believe right now we're just setting up the scene and getting to know everybody. So I believe villains will continue, we'll find those places as the season goes on. I think Aaron and Bryn are the Sonia and Ramona as far as friendship dynamic. I agree. I think they're fun. I think they're, I like Aaron and Bryn. They're 2 of my favorites, and Sai is my favorite of all. And then it's Aaron and Bryn because they just have that synergy and that dynamic that's fun. Erica had a good moment this week. She did have a really good moment this week. I'm very happy that she did that. I know some people feel like it was performative or a PR stunt. I can 1000% say, as somebody that was there, it was not performative. It was not a PR stunt. I've said this a million times. She didn't know the press was going to be there. Nobody really knew that the press was going to be there. The LA Times was really the only press that was there to cover the ice cream launch, but it's because they're working on a project with Kimberly Archie, who launched the ice cream in honor of her son. They were there to cover the launch for their new project. Erica being there was like a total last minute addition that I don't even think everyone was confident was going to happen. So everyone really was just there to support the ice cream launch. And Erica came to support the ice cream launch as well and then agreed, let's do this. Let's have this sit down. And I'm okay filming it for the LA Times. But again, it wasn't that wasn't the intention going into it, and she wasn't aware that this was the plan going into it. It kinda just all happened. Um, so yeah. Brittany says, "It kind of sucks if these ladies really kill it. We can't even call them OGs since the franchise is still called RHONY. Show needs to get a name change." I agree. It should have been called something else. It should have been called Real Housewives of Manhattan, which I think would have been really fun because they're all technically in Manhattan, right? And it would have been the same, but also differentiating from New York. They all have careers in fashion and design related. It would have been good to focus on that. How do women navigate such a cutthroat industry and have relationships? I mean, listen, that's probably what's going to come to fruition moving forward. I think there's going to be more of their dynamics. This has only been one episode, and the first episode is really just supposed to set the scene for us. It's supposed to focus on who these people are, how are they all connected, why should we care? Then we'll get more into their personal lives and their professional lives as the season goes on. Did you see Brynn made out with Peter from Pump Rules previously? Really? I did not see that, but I'm not surprised. I feel like Brynn is really hot and Peter's going to be all about that, so I'm not surprised. Cy is in Brooklyn. Brooklyn, New York. I think one lives in Brooklyn. Was it Cy or Jessa? Is Brooklyn not considered Manhattan? I don't know. I know LA and I don't know New York. And I know LA, everything is LA. Culver City, Santa Monica, Malibu, Sherman Oaks, West Covina, Pasadena, downtown, Echo Park, Highland Park, Redondo Beach. It's all technically considered LA, even though some of them are 30, 40 miles apart, it's all considered Los Angeles. So even though it'll take an hour to get from like West Hollywood to the Valley, they're both considered LA. I liked the lighthearted vibe. Yeah, I think a good, fresh, lighthearted vibe was fun. We'll see how much people are interested in it as it continues to go on. Because remember, we watch these shows for the high stakes, for the drama, for the dynamics. We'll see. SoCal, LA, 5 miles equals 30 miles. Yeah, it's like I would say 40-mile time span. Or 40-mile range span? What am I trying to say? 40-mile radius is LA. All of it's LA. All of that one chunk of California is technically considered LA. Remember, the producers also had to edit out the girls who left mid-season Lizzie, I think is who you're referring to. Somebody clarified that Lizzie was only there for 2 days into filming, so that's why it was so easy for them to edit her out is because she didn't film very much. They were only 2 days into filming, so it doesn't seem like they missed all that much with Lizzie. Um, all I know is pack snacks if my dinner reservation is over 3 miles away. I know that's right. You're gonna be stuck in that Uber. Okay, any closing thoughts about RHONY or Bethenny and Jill before we wrap tonight's live? New York City is 5 boroughs. Yeah, that's LA is like 25 boroughs. Mm. Oh, ooh, ooh. Okay, send me some good manifestation energy. I have a big project that we're trying to navigate and um trying to manifest. So give me good manifestation energy. Mm, 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 mm. Man, I haven't even finished catching up on RHONY, so they definitely have officially finished stop wait, they've officially stopped with the old cast. Yeah, they've definitely finished with the old cast. I live 30 miles from downtown LA and still live in Los Angeles County. See, Amber? Exactly. That's what it was. That's the vibe. I thought their podcast was fantastic. Whose podcast? Oh, Bethany and Jill? Absolutely. I thought it was good. It was so manic and it was so all over the place, but yeah. Always fun listening to your podcast. Thank you guys. That's so sweet. Sarah Bajo says, sending love to you and the Zack Pack Earth. Ooh, here we go. Good vibes, sparkles, and glitter only. Um, so I'm live on YouTube right now, and I didn't tell I'm not telling everybody what we're manifesting, but I got everybody in the live stream right now to send good, positive manifestation energy. So we're putting all of this collective Zack Pack energy into this. So I think all of this manifestation power, we're going to bring this to fruition. And I sent a little voice now. What else we got? Thank you, Brittany. Good vibes to you, Zach. Good vibes, good vibes. Then we need the good vibes, good vibes. Okay, any closing thoughts before we wrap tonight's live? Read the book called The Secret. It's about manifesting. Babe, The Secret is like the Bible. Of course, I know The Secret. I've actually started listening to, what is it called? The Young Pueblo book. And it's pretty good. There are a lot of like, it's called Clarity and Connection. And I don't know if you're familiar with Young Pueblo on Instagram, but I highly recommend it. But definitely we secret the shit out of all of it. Good vibes and good night. Thank you. All right, guys. Well, on that note, thank you for tuning in to tonight's live. I'm gonna finish the first episode of Real Housewives of New York season 14, the reboot. Hopefully, I'll have some more thoughts. Tune into tomorrow's podcast episode with Jamie Stein. That's going to be a good one. So stay tuned for that. Love you, mean it. Have a good night tonight. Enjoy all the good times, good vibes, and I will talk to you all very, very soon. All right. Good night, guys. Ciao for now. Bye, bye, bye. Be sure to hit the like button on your way out. Be sure to hit the subscribe button. And if you're not doing so yet, hit the bell notification button down below so that you always get me fresh up in those notifications when the tea is hot. All right, guys. Good night. Ciao for now. Bye.